So I think I probably said this. Let's see. I said it was rigorous. It will be, aligned, of course, to international benchmark standards. We are using universal design in the development of our items and tasks, so that we make sure that it's accessible to as many youngsters as possible, and by virtue of the computer, being able to make sure that students can access the items and have available to them accommodations tools that are appropriate for the student. And then providing good data for making policy decisions. Then the interim, of course, I talked about the flexibility of some length, supporting proficiency because it'll be on the same scale, and authentic measures using the full range of item types that are in the summative assessment. I mentioned that it's on the same scale, and we will include performance assessments. A word about performance assessments because it's sometimes confusing for folks. Our assessment will include things we refer to as items, which are like multiple choice, of course, but also some drag and drop because it will be on the computer, and some other ways that really kind of shorter questions that take less than 3 to 5 minutes to complete. They will include things we might refer to as tasks, which are a little bit longer in nature, probably require some writing on the part of the student. Some of which may need to be hand scored or can't be computer scored, so the adaptive engine goes offline momentarily and returns. And then a third type of assessment that we're referring to as performance tasks. These performance tasks are much more scenario-based and based on a real-world kind of a setting. They might take on the order of 60 minutes to 90 minutes to complete the entire performance task. But inside that will be a number of items and a number of tasks all around a common theme that all builds where the student has to work in a common area. So in English language arts, there might be multiple reading resources. Students ask questions about the reading to check their comprehension, but then they're asked to integrate across the readings, to take a position, and then to describe an argument that they would take and defend that argument by making particular reference back to the text. So that would be that would be somewhat larger than just a single prompt that says, use this piece of reading and write a short paragraph. So it's more complex than that. In mathematics, it might be thematic around something like designing a park. We have to use geometry, and then you also have to use some various data tables that you've been provided with regard to some of the constraints and how much a material is going to cost if we go with this contractor, material is going to cost if we go with that contractor, but all around a general kind of thematic or real-world problem. So the interims will include performance tasks as well as summative assessment. And then formative tools I talked about, and in the interest of time, I think I'll just skip over that. The overall goals, this slide is called goals. I like to think of this slide as, the label of this slide as really being success indicators. If we are successful, what will people be saying? And this is what I hope we hear. If we're successful, I hope kids are saying, I'm challenged to complete complex tasks, and I'm challenged to apply my knowledge. I know how I'm progressing towards college and career readiness, and my test results will be accurate regardless of my ability and disability or proficiency in English. That last point, you all know in Hawaii because of adaptive testing, but not everybody understands this. When you use adaptive testing, the test moves to where the student is. And so the test questions continue to get more and more precise with regard to where is the student's level of proficiency, where is the student performing. Students who are challenged by the assessment will be presented more and more easier questions, and students who are accelerated on the assessment will be challenged with more and more difficult questions. The key point here is that every student gets a set of questions and tasks that are designed uniquely for him or her. And we get good precision and accurate scores for every kid. This is not the case with a fixed form test. This is not the case where every student sees the same 50 items. Because when you have a test that's only 50 items and everyone sees the same 50 items, there are kids at the extremes who don't have enough items on that assessment that really give us information about how they're doing in particular. And the adaptive tests that we're using in Smarter Balance and the adaptive assessments that you're currently using in your current assessment program actually provide that last point of the students being able to say that their test results are accurate regardless of their ability or their particular disability or English language skill. Parents, we think, say that their child's class time is focused on learning and not on testing. I think you can see that through the formative assessment efforts and also actually the interim assessment efforts. My child had opportunities to improve. This is all going to be on a common growth scale, so we can see how students are moving in not only within the year but across years. And I know whether my child's school is performing as well as it should because of these common standards set across the consortium. Teachers, we don't want teachers to be surprised. You know, one thing I hate about No Child Left Behind, and I've been a state assessment director for a long time in the state of Washington, is it's fundamentally a too bad for you testing system. You know, I mean, the teachers think they did a great job teaching division by fractions, and it turns out when the kids take the test, well, maybe they didn't do all that great a job teaching division by fractions. And for the teacher, it's like, well, that's too bad. That's too bad. Figure it out next year. And the same thing for the kids. You know, the kids thought, well, I thought I understood that, but you take the state test at the end of the year, and maybe you didn't. So we want to try to address that. They'll have the supports that they need. We have a lot of supports built into our system, and that the test measure things in the right way, aligned to the Common Core standards. And finally, policymakers, folks like the state board and the legislature, that they're sharing costs with other states. Hawaii is not a very big state, and you're getting access to $175 million to build this assessment. And Hawaii does not have $175 million to spend on building an assessment. But you're now a partner in doing that, and we're able to leverage all of our states together to do this. That you can compare performance in Hawaii to performance in other states, which is important for policymakers. And they know that the test will work because you helped build it. You are a governing state. You are one of the voices at the table when it comes to making important design decisions. So Hawaii has various priorities with its state board. We chose 3, I think, of the 5 here. Hawaii has a priority on career and college focus, and that's what we're focused on as well. We do intend to set our cut scores on our assessment for 11th grade, which does define college and career readiness, using a lot of sources, using NAEP, using SAT, using longitudinal data systems many of our states have that can look at how students in the past have performed in high school and then in college, and then look right now at how students taking the same kinds of courses performed on our assessment to project how they might be performing in college. So I think you can understand how we're going to triangulate a lot of data sources there. And we are partnering with higher education. Every one of our states now has a higher ed lead, and we are, well, I think as of today, we were able to assign on the order of 2 folks, faculty from higher education to each one of those 10 work groups. So folks from higher ed are really stepping up to help out. Training and supporting educators for effective teaching. We do have a whole component aligned to teaching professional development, the adaptive and flexible interim assessments, and finally the formative resources that I mentioned. And finally, supporting struggling schools and students. Computer adaptive tests, I already talked about the way in which that really gets us to best understand how all students are doing. And I think that in conjunction with the response to intervention strategy that the state board has will be extremely effective here in Hawaii. And then of course the formative tools will help us understand what's going on with students in classrooms. There are a few points here about computer adaptive testing. Boy, in Hawaii, I don't know that I need to say all this. The results are quicker, the tests are shorter, So we're taking advantage of the shorter test with computer adaptive testing to address the fact that the Common Core is very deep and covers a lot of material. So we're going to do an effective job of assessing the entire breadth and depth of the Common Core, and adaptive testing can allow us to do that without an onerously long test. A lot of precision I talked about, tailored to student ability I talked about, greater security. You know, as states move towards these assessments being used for various kinds of accountability decisions, and that's not a consortium decision, that's a state decision. But as different states move in that direction, test security becomes more and more of a concern. I mean, it's a sad fact that there will be folks out there who will want to try to scam and cheat the system. I mean, it's just, that just happens. And all you have to do is read the papers about, you know, goings on in Atlanta and Georgia and Pennsylvania and elsewhere. And it's my understanding the newspaper in Atlanta just did a public information request for the entire Detroit school district, and I think maybe the Chicago school district as well, with regard to searching for cheating in the schools, kind of a thing. I gotta tell you, the adaptive test is just a huge safeguard against that. Our item bank will have 47,000 items in it. And every student will, when they sit down to the test, fundamentally has access to that entire pool of items. And it only depends on how they're doing as to which particular items they get. Now, a teacher wants to go out and memorize the 47,000 items so that they can scan the system, you know, go right ahead, and then try to teach the 47,000 items to their kids, you know, go right ahead. But I think it provides a lot of assurance against security concerns. And then this is not a new technology. Hawaii is using it, Oregon's using it, Delaware is using it, Idaho is using it, Utah is beginning to use it. Not only that, it's used on a number of other large-scale assessments, the GMAT, the GRE, Compass uses it, the Measures of Academic Progress, which is the NWEA assessment. And those are only the educational areas that use it. Adaptive testing is used in a lot of licensure exams for professions. And so this is something that's a mature technology. Why has an educational assessment used in states? Because of these large item pools that we need for it to work well. And states typically don't have the resources to build that large an item pool with a lot of items of different kind of engagement with students and require, you know, asking students to produce a lot of different kind of responses other than selective response. But we can do that now that we have the resources, so we're trying to take advantage of it. So what are we supporting? I think we're almost done here with the slides. 3 through 8 and 11 are the NCOB assessment grades, and so you see check boxes across that will do the summative assessment in all of those, and interim and the formative. 9 and 10 is not part of the formally part of the grant requirement, but we will have performance tests available in 9th and 10th grade for students to perform on. And on the interim area, we are building end-of-course assessments that draw on the interim item pool that states can design on their own. So each state might have its own assessments with regard to end-of-course assessments, and so they could build their own end-of-course assessments drawing on the interim item pool. And right now, we're in negotiations with the department whether or not we can take this end of course and slide it also into the summative using the secure item pool, but we need their permission to do that because it will be an enhancement to our grant. And then finally, 12th grade, you know there may be some 11th graders who don't do well enough to be declared college and career ready. We want to give them the option as 12th graders to retake the test after maybe they've improved a little bit. Overall timeline, so this is the test for those of you who are getting, have gray hair like mine. You can't see these words, so I can say whatever the hell I want about these boxes. You won't know if I'm telling the truth or not. So right now we're in 2011-12. Way. This and much of the other materials are on our website, which I gave you on the last slide. Really encourage you to go to the website. It's extremely dynamic, and there's a place to